I played Baldur's Gate 3 for the first time after playing Dragon Age the Veilguard. And as a Dragon Age fan, I am extremely satisfied and heartbroken in equal measure. Baldur's Gate 3 reminded me what Dragon Age 4 could have been, but obviously wasn't. But anyway, this video is not about how crap Dragon Age Veilguard was. It's about how fantastic Baldur's Gate 3 is. And I'm also going to get into all the reasons I avoided it up to now and why you probably don't have to anymore. Stick around. Playing Baldur's Gate 3 after Dragon Age Veilguard was like being in a desert for 15 years and then somewhere on the horizon you see something and you get a little bit of hope. It looks like an oasis. The closer and closer you get, you realize it's probably not what you think it is. And when you get there, it all just turns to ash. And then directly after that, you find a real oasis with fresh water, fruit, plants, beautiful people, and just drinking all of that in. That's Baldur's Gate 3. And that's the experience of playing what Dragon Age 4 should have been. Baldur's Gate 3 scratches the itch that Dragon Age Veilguard never could and never will. And I don't think any BioWare game ever will again. Everything that I wanted from a Dragon Age game, the silent protagonist, the dialogue list, the deep dialogues, the branching choices, everything is in this game. I mean, if you just compare the two games side by side, Baldur's Gate 3 looks like a sequel for Dragon Age Origins.
Light on my feet.
I had another dream, which I suppose means you did as well. Whoever's reaching out to us truly does seem opposed to the Absolute, but wants us to embrace the tadpole, venture right into the heart of the cult. Perhaps we truly have a secret protector.
I was told to accompany you and to help you, and that I shall. This may extend to the teaching of my mother's skills in time. For now, I simply do not know you well enough. I promise nothing. We are in camp, so 'tis as good a time as any. I am here because Flemeth commanded me to aid you. Why? Do you wish me to leave? I can do so if you prefer.
So just looking at this side-by-side comparison, it really is quite poetic because Dragon Age Origins was a spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. And now Baldur's Gate 3 has turned into the spiritual successor to Dragon Age Origins. It kind of closes the loop beautifully. And if you are still avoiding Baldur's Gate 3, especially as a Dragon Age Origins fan like I was, you can look beyond the turn-based combat and the complicated Dungeons and Dragons rules. It really is worth it to play. I realize there's probably only about 5 people in the world who haven't played Baldur's Gate 3 yet. But maybe like me, they were still avoiding it. And the biggest reason why I was avoiding it for over a year is the combat. I looked at videos and it was an encounter with 6 goblins that took 45 minutes to an hour, and I just thought to myself, that just looks way too overwhelming. But then I found out something about Baldur's Gate that changed everything, which is the fact that you can save during combat. Now, I am a novice at turn-based games. I don't really play them. Well, I didn't, but now I do. And I've never encountered it before where in the middle of combat you can save the game and exit and you can just return back to it. Well, in Baldur's Gate 3, you can. And that was the biggest game changer for me. So if I have a 45-minute encounter, it's no problem. You can save mid-combat and just come back when you need to. I've never encountered that before, and that was the single biggest reason why Baldur's Gate 3 became accessible to me as someone with limited time. Speaking of combat, the sheer complexity of the combat was something else that was daunting to me. There's cantrips and spell slots and actions and bonus actions and how far you can move, and every class has almost a different set of these. So one of the reasons why I avoided the game was because I just felt I didn't have the capacity to learn all of these things. But after playing the game, I can honestly say it's not nearly as complicated as it seems, and there's such an abundance of information out there on how it works. One or two YouTube tutorials on how the combat works and you'll be fine. Then you just start playing the game and kind of let it guide you. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to get into encounters that you are under-prepared for and under-equipped for. But ultimately, that's also part of the magic of the game, is going through those situations and learning how to do the combat properly and thinking about all the different ways that you can get through a situation, perhaps without using combat. And that's also where a lot of the replayability of the game comes from, because all of these classes behave differently and they give you different solutions to different problems. You can do things on your next playthrough that you couldn't do in this playthrough. So don't sweat the complexity on your first go around. Now, the complexity of the combat was one thing, but the difficulty is quite another. From what I heard initially of the game, even on easy mode, the game was, in places, way too difficult, especially for newcomers. So for me, again, someone who doesn't play turn-based games and I know nothing about D&D, I just thought that this was just not the type of game for me if I'm going to struggle too much to get into it to start with. And while that might have been true when the game launched, now, more than a year later, they have something called the custom difficulty mode, where you can basically make it as difficult or as easy as you want, and you can go beyond easy to what I would call a very easy sissy mode. And you know what? I have no problems saying that, especially on my first go around, that I used the sissy mode because, oh wait, no, I'm sure that's offensive. Let's retract that. I used the baby mode, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, because if I want to struggle in a game, I'll go play a From Software game. So the very easy mode was also something that really allowed me to get into the game, because you can basically change everything from how aggressive the enemies are, what your proficiency bonuses are, how much you pay for a long rest, whether or not the enemies can score critical hits on you. All of these things are things that you can change. And on that first playthrough where you know nothing, it is extremely helpful. And don't worry, even on the baby mode, you still have plenty of encounters as a brand new player that will challenge you, especially because you don't know a lot about party composition yet. Like, you're basically going to have, 2 warriors, a rogue and a mage perhaps, and that might not fly everywhere. So you're going to struggle still enough to make the game challenging until you actually get the ropes. And then on your second playthrough, then you don't really need to use baby mode anymore. So this is just one of the other ways that Larian Studios really showed that they respect your time as the player. They respect the intelligence of the players. They respect the integrity of the players, where they will give you the option to play as easy as you want or as difficult as you want. And they know everybody will gravitate to their preferred settings. And that's fine. Beyond the settings, you now also have mods. After patch 7, there is a mod manager in-game that you can just scroll through and install mods at your leisure. And while I will absolutely recommend playing without mods on your first playthrough, it's still a single-player narrative-driven game, so who really cares? If you want to use mods on your first playthrough, go for it. And there are mods that make it even easier. Like, for instance, the one that I started using on my second playthrough was one where you can increase your party limit. In the base game, you can have a party of 4, you included, and this mod allows you to increase your party limit to whatever you want. So I played with a party of 6. And that, yes, that will kind of ruin the balancing if you're worried about that. But if you just want to play the game and you want to enjoy the story and you want to have more variety in your party, then install the mod. And the mods are fantastic. There's so many different mods that will completely change every playthrough. So now, beyond the exceptional replayability that this game had to start with, you now have thousands of mods that will give you even more replayability. I think this is the first game that I've played that will really take you close to 1,000 hours of game time, where you still didn't see everything the game has to offer. And now with the mods, I don't think there is a limit to how much time you can spend in this game. That enormous game time was yet another daunting thing for me, something that made me apprehensive about starting a playthrough in this game. And what impressed me was actually how easily I could jump in and out of Baldur's Gate 3 without losing immersion. There are fantastic games out there, but they are a slow burn. They take time to get into, they take time for you to get immersed. And once you're in, you want to stay in there for at least a few hours. Once that immersion breaks, it's difficult to get into it. An example of this for me was Red Dead Redemption 2. It's a game that I could never really play because it takes so long to get into it. It's a fantastic game, but that immersion takes time to take hold of you, or at least it did for me. And I was very impressed with Baldur's Gate 3 at how quickly I could jump in and out. Like I could really just flip in and out of this game, and I never felt that the immersion was broken. I could jump in, play, jump out, do something else, come back, play, and it still felt seamless to me. Now, I don't know what it is about it. I cannot specifically pinpoint why that is, but that was just my experience. I had no issues with immersion breaking interruptions. So something that I mentioned in one of my previous reviews was the time, enjoyment, and progression ratio. I didn't have any problems in that regard with Baldur's Gate 3. You could jump in and play for half an hour and make a little bit of progress. You know, you could walk down a few aisles and you can explore a little bit over here and over there. And even those small sessions always felt like they were progressing the story. They were progressing something. You were gaining something out of it. Because everything felt like it was part of the main story. Like there wasn't anything that really felt like side content. Everything felt like it was well intertwined. So whether I could play for 15 minutes or 2.5 hours, everything felt meaningful. Finally, there is just the overall quality of this game. It is just an exceptionally well-made game. Something that is so rare today. You can feel the effort that was put into every little nook and cranny. The writing is chef's kiss. Beautiful. The amount of branching choices and connections and things that you do in the first act that come back in the third act. And it is just nearly the perfect RPG experience. And on top of everything that I've said so far, that must be mentioned. Like I said to start with, it scratches that itch that very few other games will. That RPG itch, that I wonder what's going to happen if I take this road. I wonder what's going to happen when I choose this. How you know you're playing an exceptional RPG is when, while you're busy with your first playthrough, you already start imagining your second playthrough. As you make choices in your first playthrough, you just start wondering, I wonder what's going to happen down the road. I wonder what would have happened if I went left instead of right. And Baldur's Gate 3 does all of that. And then there's the voice acting. The voice acting in this game is absolutely superb. I mean, I want you to listen to something, and this is not even a main character. This is not a main NPC. This is not someone you deal with in any of your playthroughs, really. This is a character that you can play, and you will barely hear their voice from time to time. And this is the introduction to that character. Just listen to this.
My rancid blood whispers to me, kill, kill, and kill again. My ruined body yearns to reap death in this world. And when this foul urge calls, it possesses my whole being. Injured beyond repair. I know nothing besides this. I must resist the dark urge, lest it consume my mind. I must discover who I was and what happened to me before my twitching knife hand writes a tragedy in blood.
That is phenomenal. And you can expect that kind of quality of voice acting throughout the game. It adds so much to the immersion. It's one of the reasons why I love a silent protagonist so much, because it allows the developers to put so much effort into the NPCs and their voice acting. Truly fantastic.
Oh, darling, I'm hurt. I thought we had something special.
Baldur's Gate 3 is not a perfect game. I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect game. But what I will say is, Baldur's Gate 3 is the closest thing to a perfect game I think we've gotten in the last 10 years. And if you have been avoiding this game for whatever reason, I really believe you don't have to anymore. You are well catered for. Just about every concern that you will have for this game. If you are an RPG fan, that is. Every concern that you would have, the developers they have thought of it, and they have provided a solution for it. The only thing that is difficult about Baldur's Gate 3 is the fact that you don't want to put it down. The fact that once you start playing, you just don't want to stop. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you got this far, I really enjoyed Baldur's Gate 3, and I am convinced, if like me, you're a Dragon Age Origins fan, especially a Dragon Age Origins fan, and you haven't played Baldur's Gate 3 yet, for whatever insane reason, the time to stop avoiding it is now. Get it, enjoy it, you won't be sorry. Thank you for this game, Larian Studios, and thank you for watching. Cheers, everybody.